and natural areas. And to begin, I would like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, and particularly our near neighbors, the Chiana First Nation, and also the Sauk First Nation as well. And so with that, I will call to order the community planning meeting of May 8th, 2023. And committee, are there any additions to the agenda? Your little notes, the pinks that are here. And there are, I believe there are 2 pinks for the community planning meeting, and so I think we'll add those to correspondence, essentially. Yeah, so, okay. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion as
So
amended.
Mayor Little, as amended, so Mayor Little and Councillor Donaldson, and all in favor? And that's carried. We have no presentations. We next move to public participation. And I do want to note that I think everyone in the room knows that there are public participation sessions for every meeting that will be hosted tonight. If you have comments about anything on the agenda, whether it's planning, public works, or environmental and natural areas, please address it during public participation. And so again, if the item comes up after public participation, normally the public will not be allowed to speak or address it specifically. So with that, is there anyone for public participation for planning?
Go ahead.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Gary Smurfett, and I live on Gilbert Drive. I'm wanting to speak about the stormwater retention pond covenant on the Metchosin Greenspace buffer that appears later in your agenda. And if I could draw your attention to the 3rd page in that report. And I'm hoping, since I brought it forward about a month ago, that all of you have had a chance to actually look at the covenant. It's a nice legal document. In the report, there's paraphrasing from the covenant, and it states that the developer must not construct or build any building structure or infrastructure on any kind on Lot D until it delivers to the district a stormwater management plan prepared by a district-approved professional engineer showing the size, design, and location of the stormwater drainage works on our buffer lands. And such plan is approved by the district. And such works are constructed in accordance with the plan and to the district's satisfaction. So that's a lot of steps before they can do any work in Lot D, which Lot D is their dominant lands, their subdivision. I was up there on the site this weekend, and there seems to be a lot of work going on, including storm drainage works, manhole barrels up there, things of that nature. The covenant states that approvals are to be in writing by the CAO. So I'd like to ask, has our CAO granted any approvals in writing on any of these things that they've asked for?
So, Gary, you got to direct questions through me.
Through the chair to the CAO.
Yes.
Has there been any approval granted in writing by the CAO for, first of all, the professional engineer that's been retained by the District of Langford to design the stormwater management plan?
Okay,
No
so
answer.
are you, I have a thought or two, but if you have a response, please.
I do have a response. The answer is no. No approval has been given.
Okay, so
The one thing I will clarify, if I could, there are 2 sort of sets of steps in terms of when work can be done. Flow monitor is put in place. And with that, once that is done, the developer was, given the okay to go ahead and do clearing. And I'm sorry, I'm looking for it here.
Yeah, it's in the agreement, I agree.
Yeah.
It's two steps.
Yeah, and so the second one, and the more significant one, is the work after the stormwater management plan has been approved. So,
Yeah, and that's what I'm wondering, is if there have been any, first of all, the engineer that does the stormwater management plan has to be approved by the district in writing. So, like myself, I have been accepted by the courts as an expert witness in stormwater management. Okay? So, it's not just a PN can walk in and do that. The second thing is, after you accept that person, then they prepare a plan that would include what happens in the dominant land, the subdivision up above, and then what they're going to do with their water, or portion of it, that goes down under the buffer lands. And it would appear that's just a portion of the water, but that would be our concern. So that plan would then be submitted here
yeah,
and reviewed by our consultant that we would retain for it. And then that approval would be given, according to the covenant, back to the developer. And then the third one is then they would be able to proceed with building it, detailed design and building it on the land. And then after that's completed, then they can walk into the construction of infrastructure. So they're nearing that point when they're stockpiled material up on site for infrastructure.
yeah.
So I was just wondering if any of those approvals have been granted, and they have been answered. None of them have been granted. And they have to be granted in writing by the CAO according to item 10A of the easement covenant. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gary.
Councillor Shukin, if I
Mayor.
may, could you just clarify the answer from the CAO for the people that are at home that may not have heard that there was no approval?
Yeah, okay, oh, sorry. Thanks very much. To Mr. Smurfit's question about whether there has been approval of a stormwater management plan, that would have then allow for the construction of roads, sewage, waterworks, and homes. Ultimately, the answer is no. So the one thing I can say is that I did speak with the engineer last week, and that we have received for review a stormwater management plan. So where that is in terms of approval, I can't say yet. However, I think staff are very aware that there's a plan in place to draft a policy that any major stormwater works does have to be reviewed by our advisory committees before it is approved. So that ideally will come before council next week for further consideration. So Mr. Smurfit.
I'm just going to be a pain in the ass.
Well,
Here, 5 seconds. And then I'm
Okay,
going to walk out.
okay,
The engineer that designs it
okay.
for the developer has to be approved by the CAO in writing.
Mhm.
So we're not at the point of them doing any stormwater management plan at all. We're at the point of they submit someone who's
Yeah,
they put forward as an expert in this field to design it. That was my point. It's the very first step. The others follow afterwards. Thank you.
it's a very good point, thank you. And is there anyone else for public
Yeah.
participation?
Kimberly Hill. Citizen Hill, 1070 Brookview Drive. Similar to a previous speaker, I've been here before this matter. It's regarding the same clause, this detention clause, the covenant. In particular, this clause, the developer must not construct or build any building, structure, or infrastructure of any kind on Lot D until it delivers to the district stormwater management, etc., etc., etc. I have through the chair. I have a question for Sue. Why the heck have we not asked for a stop work order on this property? They have not delivered the stormwater management. We have not approved it. Is there a reason for this?
Well, here Ms. Hill, I'm going to answer that because again, the approval, there are certain there are certain approval powers that Metchosin has, but the main one is with the District of Langford. That is Langford's jurisdiction. My understanding is that they have received all of the approvals that they need. There's a specific bylaw for this, for Centre Mountain. And what they did in terms of what the requirement that we have, they met that in terms of the clearing. So,
Pardon me, I just disagree about that completely. I do not believe that they've met the minimum requirements. They have gone ahead and started construction before they have permission from Metchosin. We've been extremely generous with them. We've given the outrageous ability for them to use our land as an easement and for their selfish purposes. And it is my firm opinion, and is well-based, especially after I got this in tonight's agenda. This spells it out really clearly. We should have not allowed, we're getting bulldozed here. And it occurs to me that the reason that we're chosen the way it is the way it is because of brave people protecting our borders. And that's all I've got to say about this. I'm outraged, and I think that we need to get up on our hind legs and make sure that we've got control of what's happening. That critical place, headwaters of Bilston Creek, sacred land. That's all I have to say.
thanks, Kim. You know, I will just make one comment to your comments, Kim. Is this council is equally concerned. And the one thing I have to point out to everybody is the covenant was dated in 2017, and it was only in December that it was made publicly known. Perhaps it was out there if you read the documents closely, but it was not publicly known, broadly known until December of this year. And that was a decision that I made as the planning chair. That's where it came out, but I also had the support of the council as well. So we've also formed a working group to look at some of the issues with the bufferland and also with drainage as well. So we share that concern. So, and Kim, I remember I was with you at that first, one of the revival meeting in the Bilston Creek. So again, that comes from not wanting to let things pass and give a pass, comes out of concern as well. And I think that's shared at the table here. So
Granted, action further. Let's go and assert ourselves.
Kim, if you're going to talk, you have to come to the microphone, okay?
I'll cease, thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much, Kim. Is there anyone else for public participation?
Hi, Michelle Morgan, 4495 Happy Valley Road, Mile Zero Brewing.
Michelle, if you're going to talk about Mile Zero Brewing, I might ask you to hold off, and I might ask you to come up and just
Sure,
talk about it.
I didn't know when we were going to.
Yeah, sorry,
Okay.
I should have clarified that. But,
No
yeah.
worries.
Sarah Anthony, Metchosin Road. Can I talk about Mile Zero? Okay, my turn to talk about it though. So I just wanted to speak in support of Mile Zero. I think it's quickly become a hub for this community. I can't say I've been as much as I'd like to, but I've had some lovely drinks with other Metchosinites, sometimes just a tea. Often I've seen friends or families with kids playing board games or couples sharing a growler and some breadsticks. I don't think this is some sort of drunken bacchanal, so I totally would support extending their hours so they can open specifically during the day on holidays, because I think that would be like really just a nice thing for, you know, again, not late night things. We don't have a lot of those unless they're having private parties, so I think that that's fine. I don't think that's going to affect people negatively. I mean, let's face it, most people here are not late nighters. I mean, me and Eric consider ourselves young Metchosin, and we're like in bed by 8, so I don't think they could stay open late, but they're probably not going to have a whole lot of us here. So I think allowing them to do that is not going to have the negative effects that maybe people claim they will. I just don't think they would. And I just also wanted to mention about the vacation rental situation. I know it's not on the agenda, but I just missed it last time, I think. Personally, I'm not a fan of vacation rentals in terms of residential suites being used, because obviously we have a housing crisis, as I mentioned time and time again, and of course you're all aware of. But I do think, you know, they are there, and I understand why people do it. It makes money. I just think it would be a good idea if they're going to have it, that Metchosin made some money off of it too, right? That we either taxed it or had some sort of way that they had to get it checked out or get a license. It's a business. They should have a business license, right? So that's just my 2 cents on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Anyone else for public participation? Katie, please.
I just want to clarify, is this the time that I can talk about Mile Zero?
Yeah, please.
Katie Nelson, William Head, and I've been to the Mile Zero Pub. They're very nice people. Their food is good. It's a lot of fun tasting their different beers. And I like the idea of them having longer hours in the daytime, but I'm totally not in favor of them staying open till 11 o'clock at night. I don't think there's much of a call for that by people that live in Metchosin, so that would be something that they would be doing to attract people outside of Metchosin. And I hope that they can stay in business but not stay open until 11 at night. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. Yeah, please. And if you could say your name and what street you live on.
Sure. Hello, everybody. First time for me here. We've been living here with my partner 10 years and happily in Metchosin. You know, a bunch of people in farming community especially. I helped to establish the Nutkaros mill across the road. And yeah,
Sorry, your name?
sorry. Yaroslav Turecek.
Okay,
I'm living in Prairie Cross Road. 4522. And yeah, I'm here to support also a lot of the people, Michelle, Dirk, and Mike in their support, because I kind of know what does it mean to create something here, even like when we are in a short time and we start with the Nutkaros. And it's the place where everybody can meet. I feel it's a big benefit for this community, you know, create more opportunity to meet people in the core there. And I feel they are not the bar, you know, they want to be a place where people can go together, spend time and hang out, and of course there's good product and have something a little bit to eat. So I feel we should help them to run the business as much as they can, because like give them the flexibility to be open later or not. And they can adjust the hours in winter times or like extending summer times they want, because like closing at 8 when this is summer and the light is still 10:30, it's kind of doesn't make so much sense. And basically that's it. I didn't really learn anything written, so I'm not a really good speaker, but I feel that this is exactly what, and I'm representing a bunch of my friends and other people who are thinking that the extended hours is truly the problem, but then as we see it could be, and they said, oh, I couldn't make it today, so I tried to make it and speak for them as well. So please, if you can, help them. And they had no bad records in 6 months. When I talked to owner of, for example, the Cumberland Brewing, he was I don't know how many years there, and he was telling me like he is going around the communities like this and explaining people what does it mean, and he is not there to make people drunk. It's just a place where people can meet, and his business is working very well at their home with no bad records. So, and as was mentioning here, we are going to bed pretty early here, so stay longer in summer nice evenings in Metchosin would be really cool, I think, for everybody.
Great.
So, please.
Thanks, James.
Through the chair, can you give our deputy corporate officer the correct spelling of your name, please? She's at the back of the room. That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Good thought. Carlo. Anyone else for public participation?
Eric White, 4290 Metchosin Road. I'd like to start by apologizing to you all for my conduct at the last meeting. It was over the top, inappropriate, and my passion doesn't give me an excuse to make comments that are uncalled for. I just would like to speak in support of Mile Zero Brewing and their extended liquor service hours. I think it would be good if they could hold private functions later into the evening, giving Metchosin an opportunity to maybe rent out their facility and have a place close enough to home that, you know, people can walk, and saves us all the hassle of going anywhere else, then keeps us tight to our community. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. And unanimous. Lisa Key.
Lisa Gee, Kangaroo Road. I hadn't actually planned on speaking tonight, but I just wanted to throw in my support for the comments from Gary Smurfett and Ken Hill. Based on the prior history of the buffer lands, I would also like to maintain the pressure on the council that this is handled as correctly as possible. I know that some of it is closing the barn door after the horse is out, but to maintain that pressure that this is handled correctly, certainly based on their comments of getting approvals and so on. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Lisa.
Good evening, Tamara Ballard, Booton Road. I would like to show my support for Mile Zero for their extended hours. I think it would be nice to actually go there after council meetings and have a chance to debrief with our community. So I would just like to show my support for the extended hours. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Anyone else for public participation? Going once, twice. Thank you very much, everybody. And we will talk about Mile Zero as we move along the agenda here. So, okay, so item 5A is the adoption of the Community Planning Committee meeting of April 17th. And any comments on that? Page 3 of the agenda. And if no comments, could I have a motion to adopt the minutes?
Motion to.
Councillor Donaldson, Councillor Epp, second. And any further comments? Hearing none, call the question. All in favor? And thank you, that's adopted. Receipt of minutes. First one we have is the Parks and Trail Advisory Select Committee meeting of April 18th. And any comments? Councillor Craig?
Sure, well, I can move to receive
Okay,
the
sure.
minutes, and I just have a comment to say that there's a lot of important stuff in the document here, but I just want to highlight the 3-hour field tour that Mark Atherton gave me, which was fabulous. We went around and visited, I think, touched on I think all the parks and most trails, and it was just a really interesting and inspiring tour around to see what we've got in Metchosin with someone who knows it firsthand, but also all the work that's been done by the committee over years, so much appreciate that.
Great. We have a motion from Councillor Gray to adopt, second or receive. Councillor Donaldson, any further discussion? Councillor Donaldson.
Can you give us an update of what happened with the unauthorized tree cutting in Blaney area there?
Well, what I'm to understand is there was tree cutting near the trail. This was detected. It was really there was a bylaw officer that went out to investigate. He could find no signs that would lead to a culprit. So, and to be honest with you, Councillor Donaldson, I'm not exactly sure where this took place. Thank you, Mayor Little, any further information?
Yeah, I went down after we got the report, so it was at the bottom of the trail when you're looking at the lookout to the right in front of the memorial bench. So there was some clear evidence of recent cutting of some of the trees that were coming up. And you're right, there was no evidence of who may have done that. And I don't know whether that case has been closed or that ticket's been closed or what.
Yeah. And I did hear, by way of Mark Atherton, the chair of PTAS, that he was contacted by CRD Bylaw, and they seem to have done a fairly thorough investigation, such as they could. So we'll keep an eye on it, and yeah.
So is the file still open?
I doubt it, but I don't know for sure. Susan, Ms. Starnowski, you know, okay.
I'm not able to confirm if it's still open or not.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to receive these minutes. Thank you. And all carried. The Bufferland Working Group meeting of April 20th. And so we met as a group that night, first time for a few people meeting each other. We didn't really talk too much in terms of the Bufferland itself, but we covered off some work process things, and we provided some, Councillor Donaldson and I provided some background. We did discuss the possibility of doing a site tour, which was done and led by Councillor Donaldson on Saturday. And so that's been done. What we talked about at that meeting was moving swiftly to begin our work. And so step one of that was to do the public information meeting. And that will be held tomorrow at 7 p.m. in this chamber here. And please come out if you can, and Councillor, welcome as well. And so the focus of that meeting tomorrow will be, we'll do ideally no more than a 30-minute presentation covering some background information, giving the community some things to think about, and then we'll open it up to discussion after that. So, yeah. Councillor Donaldson, anything further to add on the...
No, I just encourage the public to come out. There's been a lot of people that have been interested, so I'm expecting a lot of people here.
Great.
I'd be disappointed if there wasn't.
For sure.
Hopefully for our first engagement, absolutely.
Yeah. And so again, the mandate of the committee is, well, there's a few elements, but it's to report back to council within 6 months of forming, so we're underway now, and to hold 2 information meetings. This is the first, and the second one will be to report on what we've come to. So we're off and underway. And so with that, can I have a motion to receive the minutes from April 20th? So moved by Mayor Little and Councillor Donaldson. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, so we move to the fun part of the agenda now. So reports. So on page 15 of your agenda, you will find a staff report with a request for a development permit. And so this is for 366 Park Drive, and effectively the structural focus of the development permit is a single-story garage of 75 square meters or 800 square feet. And this is coming to the committee for a few reasons. So Park Drive is located within the Shoreland Slopes Development Permit area. And so when you're in a DPA, there are certain requirements that you may have to meet. And so with this particular DPA, all new developments require an engineer's report. Removal of vegetation is to be minimized. House construction, regrading, excavation is not permitted within 60 meters of the shoreline. And then you need to look at issues like setbacks from the shoreline, slope stability, runoff, and compliance with drainage provisions. One of those is that the effective impervious area cannot exceed 10%. And then, minimizing the removal of vegetation. Okay, so in this case, the garage is going to be within 60 meters of the shoreline. And there is an engineer's report that says that this can be done without any negative impact on the environment and the shoreline itself. But what I've noticed as I read sort of in between the lines is that without some change, there is going to be a reduction in impervious surface, and there's potential of the effective impervious area moving to over 10%. So what's happening is the applicant is proposing to convert 132 square meters of asphalt drive-in, convert that to gravel. And then there'll be other steps taken to improve drainage as well. So I have some thoughts, and I mentioned one thing we tried to do with this is to arrange a site visit. One of the options we have is to maybe do the site visit and then come back to the planning committee for further discussion. But with that committee, I leave it up to any comments you may have. Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, so there's a lot of information here. I was specifically interested in what they were looking at for stormwater management, because we're also dealing with that with bufferland, but this is a much smaller scale, also a very sensitive area with the basin there, the lagoon. They have also talked about diverting the water into where there's vegetation, a rainwater garden. I think these are all really good attributes to the land. I certainly would support a site visit. Specifically, I'm interested in the 4 trees. I realize they're not huge, but trees are important with our environment, with water and carbon sequestration. These trees are anywhere from 7 to 15 inches in diameter. So I'd like to see what the location is and have a better look at that. I remember campaigning through that area and have a pretty good sense of the lay of the land, but until you see it, you don't. Each one's a little bit different, so I would appreciate that opportunity. I also like the idea that they're willing to put in gravel instead of more hardscaping, because they are going to be putting in a roof for that garage. So it's a good compromise.
Great. Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I'll just agree with those points of Councillor Donaldson, and I agree with your proposal that we do a site visit and follow up in planning committee.
Great. Mary.
Yeah, I'd like to move option number 2 for discussion, table the application pending more information from staff on the applicant, including a site visit, and to come back to the planning committee. So that's a motion.
Great. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Donaldson. And discussion.
Yeah, can I speak to that? The site visit would be really important, as you mentioned, for us to do our due diligence, especially because this is within the shoreland slope development permit area. So it's really hard to imagine the realignment of the driveway, the depression area, the grassed area, as well as the impervious area requirement and the runoff area. And also I have some specific questions regarding the rain garden, maybe for the engineer or for our planner, as well as sort of some of the definitions regarding, for instance, the runoff coefficient of greater than 0.8. That doesn't really mean a lot to me, so I just need a little bit of guidance in order to clearly understand the application and to give an informed decision. So those are some of my comments. I did note that, as you did in the Rising report on page 18 of 49, that the engineer Neil Clausen did say there was no adverse impacts on the sloped area. So that was good, and that was noted in the carefully outlined report of the planner. So of course I'd like to thank the planner for her report, but I just have a little bit more questions and possible answers that'll help me in any ways come to a conclusion.
Great. Just one quick response. Whenever I encounter things like drainage coefficient 0.8 or whatever, it's like, what does that number mean? So I went and had a look, and I think they top out, the coefficient tops out at 1. The higher the number toward 1 means the more impervious. So something like a farm field might be 0.01 or 1 or 0.01. Yeah. But once you get up to 0.8, that is a hardscape that doesn't drain well. So yeah, but excellent comments.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table, and we've seconded it. Councillor Gray, or Councillor Rapp, sorry.
I haven't said anything. I think that they've ticked most of the boxes. I think we need. I'm always happy to have a site visit just to see what's going on there. But I do respect the decision of the geotechnical engineer. As far as it seems like he's pretty happy with the plan. So.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any further comments? And hearing no comments, again, the motion before us is to table the application pending more information from staff or the applicant, and also request that staff provide a site visit or arrange a site visit for council. So any further comments before we...
And then to come back to the planning committee.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, and I think we've got, I'm betting Tina, Ms. Hanson has that, so I will call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Okay, so we next come to the staff report on Mile Zero Brewing. And I'm just going to make an opening comment or two, and then if I could, I was going to invite Michelle and Dirk to come to the mic and explain their application before turning things over to the committee for their comments. So really the one thing I just want to clarify before going to Dirk and Michelle is the question before us tonight is whether we provide comment on the application, and sorry, not tonight, but open ourselves to providing comment on the application, which would thus trigger our involvement in a broader consultation process. Or we opt out of comment, which I take to mean that we will then officially not be able to provide comment into the process, and that is turned over to the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Board. Or we could outright reject the application. So whatever we feel about the request of adding the hours, the question before us is along those lines right here, unless we decide, or we decide as a council that we want to reject the application totally. So provide ourselves as a vehicle for comment, turn it over to Liquor Cannabis, or reject the application. So now if I could ask Michelle and Dirk to come up, and if you could explain what it is you've applied for and how you see that fitting in with your operation at present.
Sure.
And if I could, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to go through your comments.
Okay, I will do my best. Hi, I'm Michelle from Mile Zero Brewing. You're probably going to have to remind me of the questions because I'm not that good. But basically what we want to do is be able to extend our service hours so that we can look at being open earlier, for example, like on holidays. Right now, liquor and cannabis, with our liquor service hours that we have now, if a stat, like for example, if a stat holiday falls on a Monday or a Friday, we can't open up before 2 p.m. So, for example, most places on stat holidays have Sunday hours or things like that. So, where they're opening up at 11, we wouldn't be able to do that until 2. So that's kind of the reason why we're asking for the extension of the hours, partially for that. And I'm just gonna pull up my notes here again, pardon me. They just went black. So stat holidays is one, special events is another. So if we want to rent out the space, we would then have limited time where we're able to rent out the space too, unless we get special permitting, things like that. So if we have a private event and they want an extended hour, for example, for instead of 8 to 9 on a Friday or on a Thursday, we would have to get 2 special permits and a couple other things, and it would take like 6 to 8 weeks for us to be able to accommodate that. So if somebody comes up to us with a party or something like within a week or two, we'd have to decline that right away, which has occurred. And then the other thing, sorry, my phone keeps going on. And then seasonal variations. So for example, we're with our picnic area and whatnot, it's in the fall and winter, things get dark at 4 or 5 o'clock at night, which is fine. In the summer, we want to be able to have the extended hours where people are more active and things like that till about 9:30 or 10. But the first thing that we have to do is look at our service, the liquor service hours before we can even look at the extension of our operating hours. So I just want to clarify that because I think there's a confusion of our service liquor hours to our operating hours. So right now what we're asking is the service liquor hours be extended, not necessarily our operating hours. Operating hours right now we don't have any intention at this time to extend. So it's more we're just trying to look at the stats, things like that we can extend hours and begin either before or a little bit after. And then the other thing too is with our service liquor hours, the way they are now, we have lots of families and games that happen. Families come in after supper, so 6:30, 7 o'clock. We have to close by 8. That's not enough time necessarily for a full game to be played. So we have a half-hour extension with the service liquor license to everything has to be done by 8:30. So we have to have everybody out the door and our doors locked at 8:30. So with this extension, we aren't necessarily going to be serving anyone, but they have that extra like 10 minutes or 20-minute leeway where they can finish up a game, enjoy the rest of their conversation, and then proceed to leave. Did I make the time? Did I answer the question?
Absolutely.
Did I answer
All
your
good.
question? Okay.
Yep. I'm going to ask the committee if they have anything for Michelle and Dirk. Questions or clarifications? I guess while you're thinking, I have one clarification. So you're seeking an extension of your hours from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Our
Your liquor service hours.
Our liquor service hours,
Okay.
which are different than our operating
Okay,
hours.
so that was my clarification.
Yes.
Okay.
So operating hours. So even right now, we have our liquor service hours during the week start at 2 p.m. Where Monday through Thursday we don't open until 4:30. So that's the difference. We have a little bit more opportunity there, but we're setting up our hours as to what we feel is appropriate for our operating hours. So that's the other thing. If nobody comes, we're not going to open. And if nobody stays late, we're not going to stay late, right? So we're just trying to be service and community minded here as well. So
Great. Okay. If there are no, Councillor Donaldson.
So that I'm clear, I know you want to stay open later, do you want to open earlier?
well, that's just it with stats right now. The way it is that we wouldn't be able to open until 2 p.m. So we would like to be able to open earlier, like on stats. So that's why we're asking for just a blanket instead of having. Right now, everybody's really confused also with our hours of operation because there's variances every day, like Monday through Thursday, and then Friday is a different hours, and then Saturday is different hours. So if we can try to like streamline that as well as just to be able to say these are the hours that we have, as well as if we can get the extension previous to, we may be able to extend our hours and open earlier. Not just on stats, but on regular days as well. And then we might be able to support the Metchosin community by being able to hire someone else who is from the local community as well. So.
Okay, so something like every day from 2 till 9 or something like that.
Well, yeah, but with stats, right? Like that's the other thing is liquor doesn't consider stats. Like it just considers a day, right? So if it falls on a Monday, and you say you want us to be open at 2 for our liquor hours, we can't open earlier than that. Right? So that's why we're just asking.
Okay. So for stats and special events, seasonal variations, I do understand that.
Okay.
The reason I'm asking about the 2 o'clock start, say during the week, the business week, when schools and other operations, is this one of the things that came up in the very beginning was there's a preschool around the corner. And preschool ends at 1 o'clock, Monday to Friday when it's in operation. So obviously they're not in operation on evenings or stats. So that was where my question was coming from. So that was a concern in the community at one point in time. I'm just saying as a statement, not one way or the other.
Your parents love us.
They come in with their kids all the time.
I understand that, but there is a concern in the community with alcohol and driving and kids, and it's busy. It's busy in the course, getting busier because it's a popular place to come to. And I have been in your establishment with with families there, which is great to see, especially with the games and stuff. I think that's quite charming.
Yeah, no, it's been wonderful, and we've been super well received, and I can't speak highly of everybody supporting us. It's been wonderful. So, and I think that's part of why we're here is because we wouldn't be here if we didn't feel that we had community support to be wanting us to have a little bit longer in the evening or earlier during stat holidays and other seasonal events.
So I see Councillor has her finger on her mic. Go ahead, Councillor.
I have my notes. I don't have a question, but I do have some comments. council spent considerable time developing a strategic plan, and the first topic under the social pillar states encourage a vibrant village center and corridor. Mile Zero is a tiny nano brewery selling homemade craft beer, non-alcoholic beverages, and food choices. Doesn't have blare loud music, has art on the walls, not big TVs broadcasting the game of the hour. And it seems to me that, Mile Zero has kind of been singled out at times for criticism, while other much, much larger establishments in Metchosin have far greater latitude in their ability to operate. Metchosin Cafe for one, the Metchosin Golf Club for another, and the community hall regularly has events where the bar is open later. Excuse me. While Mile Zero serves beer, all the others can offer hard liquor, mixed drinks, and wine, which all have a much greater alcohol content. When I've stopped by Mile Zero, what I've seen is a couple of guys having a beer and sausage roll after work, a few couples dropping by for an evening, people playing a board game, families with kids, toys, and pizza. So since it's open, Mile Zero has been a low-key establishment, the owners keeping true to their commitment of creating a community gathering space. Right now, the brewery doesn't open all the hours it possibly can, and there's no intention to open daily, every day from 11 to 11. It only gives them an option to occasionally open earlier or later, such as stat holidays, as you've said. I believe council should not spend the money for advertising, correspondence, and staff time, and leave the community engagement to the liquor board. And I would like to move option 2, which is to opt out of the public input process. There's no comment from the local government, and therefore the LCRB will be responsible to gather public input.
Okay, so you guys can probably say.
I want us to say thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you
But
very much.
if you have any questions,
If you
ask
have
them.
any
Yeah,
further,
for sure.
bring us
Okay.
back up. But thank you
Thanks.
so much
Thanks
for your
so
time
much.
tonight.
Okay, so bold and decisive motion from Councillor Epp. Do we have a second? I will second for discussion. I like Councillor Epp. I'm struggling. Well, the one option I think we should not pursue is reject the application. I don't see that there's any merit to do that. It may not succeed at the end of the day, but at least it should be heard. I think Mile Zero has been a great addition to the community to date. I don't think there's been trouble there. I just don't see any merit to rejecting the application. The question is, what do we do with providing comment on the application, whether it's, or do we opt out? So I have to say I'm struggling a little bit with this. The one thing I do reflect on is the council of the past spent a lot of time, there's a lot of effort and a lot of community comments on this. And then there were 2 consultation processes that happened. One on behalf of the council, then apparently that wasn't done right, so the liquor and cannabis had to do it again. So, I don't know, I'm anxious to hear what the rest of the committee thinks about this. And I just will say that we do have a motion on the floor now to opt out of comment, option 2. Councillor Craig, thank you.
I'll move to it. So thanks. Well, I'd like to hear some other people's comments before I say whether I'd support the motion or not. People will know that I was involved in the earlier consultation from the public perspective, being within the radius of concerned citizens. And you're correct, Councillor Schuken, there's been 2 public consultations already done. And the council forwarded to the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Board its recommendation in terms of hours. Turned out, as you say, I guess they found the district's efforts lacking But they in fact endorsed the hours that were put forward. So when they heard from the community, whatever they heard, they accepted the hours that the council had put forward. And they were, as Councillor Donald said, restricted in the morning because of the preschool and restricted in the evening. The argument was put forward, and I believe accepted by council, that the community should close down at a certain time. To only have a liquor establishment being the only thing that's open at nighttime might not be in the best interest of the community. The concerns that were expressed by people who wrote in were noise, lights, increase in traffic, parking, drunk driving, odors, air quality, safety, village center, rural ambiance, not beyond rural ambiance. They were looking for a rural ambiance. The lack of sidewalks, no police supervision, concerned disturbances, and people speaking for a smaller venue. I agree with what people have said, that we've seen pretty nice behavior around the location. But I think the bigger issue is the long and winding road at night in the rain in the wintertime to Royal Bay and Langford, where many people presumably will come from, because I'm not sure we have the population to support the bar being open the hours that we're talking about, or that are being proposed today. Maybe the more important thing, though, would be that we haven't yet, we have a management operations plan pending in our strategic plan about the old school, what do we want to have happen there. And I think it's legitimate that we should consider what happens in this particular location as well. What do we mean by the vibrant center, for example? And so I'd like us to have that discussion and sort that out, and then underneath that would come the topic of the brewery itself. The other thing to note is that we don't have an alcohol policy in place on district-owned properties. And so while mention is made of other places in the community that are open later, none of them are owned by the district. So it's us who carry a significant share of the liability in the circumstance of an actual problem. And so we're talking about the owners of the facility, but we're also talking about the liability and the concerns that we would carry. The LCRB advises local government's failure to demonstrate due diligence in mitigating risks can result in heavy financial damages. It just takes one injury on the road, of course, to back to this place that would hammer us pretty hard. Not so much a fatal accident, but one where somebody survives and is disabled as a result. So we can, of course, proceed, and if a public consultation was successful, the hours would be set by the liquor board, and then there's no turning that back. So that's for good, for as long as the location is there. It's a little bit different than what the previous council said was, well, we'll take these hours and we'll go with them. And then the opportunity was to expand them at some future point if it seemed like a good idea. If you expand them to the maximum allowable, which is what we're talking about here, the liquor service hours, not the operating hours, then what you're doing is just saying forever forward now, as long as the Mile Zero exists there, under this licensing regime, they can be open from 11 morning to 11 night if they so choose at any day of the week. Previous council suggested stat holidays from 1 p.m. to 8 p.m. I think what the proprietors have explained is that that was the one question that the liquor board didn't decide on. Instead, they say day of the week would be determinative. So the liquor board said that's reasonable. We've got the feedback from the community. 2 public consultations. They have the results of all of that. They accepted these hours and said that works for us on the liquor control board side. And for me, I'd be interested in a better argument about, for the community, why we would go later. As I say, I was up there again last night, tried it a few nights this week, see it at 9:30, what's going on? Of course, nothing. It's a very quiet place. There's nothing happening there at nighttime.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Mayor Little, Councillor Donaldson, Mayor Little, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thanks to the planner for the report. I appreciate the report to the intern CAO. So yeah, I'm sort of mixed feelings regarding this. I was on the previous council and we went through a lot of letters back and forth. There was a lot of letters, I would think. If I'm recalling correctly, there were more letters against in terms of the longer hours than for. That's my recollection. moving forward to this term, I think we do need a policy on liquor and cannabis licensing applications, as Councillor Gray has indicated. I think that's one thing that we need to move on. I'm remembering also our conversations with Superintendent Todd Preston, and he said when he was talking to us that one of the major concerns is drunk driving and driving without a license and drunk driving, and I'm really concerned about that. I would have preferred to review this application in a year's time. So this is only 6 months, and I agree we've received no complaints that I'm aware of. I've stopped by there not to partake, but just to see what's going on. There's always staff there. They're very pleasant. People seem to be having a great time, and I have no problems with that. I would just prefer to have a year of what's happening in a year and then reassess. At this point, I'm not trending towards granting the extended hours because I'm really worried about the unintended consequences of that. I don't have a crystal ball to understand what those could be, but I could surmise what they could be, and I'm not feeling as comfortable in moving forward at this time. Doesn't mean in the future I may not be able to consider that, but at the current time, given what's been said at the table already, as well as my own reservations, and also what we've heard from Superintendent Todd Preston, gives me pause for thought.
Great. Thanks, Marilyn. Councillor, thank you.
Yeah, I think those are good points. Certainly a year is a good grace period. It's getting the core is getting more popular. We've got a lot of interest in activities at the school. We've got the pending car show that might be happening this summer. There's some pop-up markets. There's interest to rent out the gymnasium. Which is all great for a small business like this, brings more people. And then the outdoor patio will be open. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the business grows in that regard. So I think a year's grace certainly is a good idea. I know that our community definitely would chime in if they had the opportunity. We've already had a couple of letters come in just even in the last couple of days on this. Yeah, so I would support going for a year and evaluating how this transpires for this business and support that process.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Gray?
Well, hearing those interventions, I'll vote against the motion on the table, and I suggest coming back in a year makes good sense. And I too want to recognize we heard from Katie Nelson in the audience tonight, but also Bev Bacon and Kathy Atherton with similar type of concerns. Give us some time to look to see how things are going and then pick it up from there.
Great. Councillor, do you want to say one more thing?
Well, I think it's pretty clear where I stand on it. I think I think we've heard that the main reason is so that they could open probably during the lunch hour during a stat holiday and be open, say in the spring when it's still light until 10 o'clock. I really don't think the arguments about drinking and driving and so on really pertain to such a tiny place where there really isn't a lot of drinking going on, but a lot more socializing. People can certainly go across the street to the cafe and start drinking in the morning. So I think and it's only across the street from where that preschool distance would be. So I think it's unfortunate not to give them a chance to support the business.
Thanks, and I am going to vote in support of the motion. Whether it's defeated or not, I will support it. The one thing I have to say though is I'm mindful of the limitations that Mile Zero has on it right now. So whether it's parking, whether it's the room that they have to have patrons in, and there's even limits on the amount of alcohol that they can serve. I don't fully understand that, but I think you're not allowed, Dirk, if I can ask you a clarification on that, that is correct?
Well, we're
So
all trained in serving it
Through the
right.
chair, could you ask him to come to the mic,
sure.
please,
Sorry.
just for the recorder? Thank you.
Hi, Dirk Slot, 3811 Cedar Hill Road. Yeah, we're all trained with serving it right.
Okay.
So we have to monitor our customers and not overserve them.
Okay.
So that is like our limit.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, we can serve, so we're trained in like volumes, time.
Okay, sorry, I misunderstood, but thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, that said, again, there are some limitations in terms of the number of patrons that they can have, and just the vibe that they created, it doesn't strike me that it's right for, again, as someone mentioned, TVs and leather jackets and whatever else that you might find in a bar of bad repute. So, not that I ever go to those, but. So, if there are no further comments, I will call the question. So, the motion is to support the opt-out for comment motion. So, all in favor? And opposed? Okay, that motion is defeated. Now we still have we still have to finish the business here. If we reject the application, yeah, okay, so because there is an application, I think that it's incumbent upon us, I'm wondering if there's actually a do nothing option as well. I will leave it to maybe others if you want to make a motion to outright reject, but I wonder if there is actually a do nothing option. And Mr. Aronofsky, any thoughts on that?
So option 2 would be equivalent to do nothing, you're not commenting.
Okay.
And we're not also gathering public feedback.
Okay, great. Okay. Hearing nothing else, so go ahead, Mary Lou.
Through the chair, can I just get clarification from the interim CAO? Mr. Noski, could you come to the mic and explain that to me? So what I'm confused about is, has the application gone to the Liquor and Cannabis Control Board and they're waiting for us to comment?
Yes, it has. So the application itself goes to the Liquor Control Board. So this is just for us, for a chance for referral. Yeah, so we're not the ones that are deciding whether or not to extend the hours. It's with the Liquor Control Board.
Right. So by us not commenting, does that imply we're fine with?
No, it just means they will take on the process of gathering feedback. As was my understanding, that was the route that was done the first time the license was approved.
And secondarily, do we have assurance that they will do a public consultation process, or is it up to them to decide whether they need to do a public consultation process? You see where I'm going with this?
Yes, I see that Councillor Gray has this in.
Go ahead.
I would just say, yeah, it is on them because it is the application. So they are responsible for gathering public feedback, but there's also an option for us as a referral agency to do that as well. So they will do the, if we defer that responsibility to the Liquor Control Board, they will do the public feedback.
Right, and my final question is, so we can't give comment without taking on the public consultation process ourselves? Or can we say to the Liquor Control Board, yes, please go ahead and do the public consultation and then send our own letter?
I'll have to seek confirmation of that. I'm not clear. It was Councillor Gray's information.
Councillor Gray, go ahead.
I think what's going on here is that the opportunity, option 1 is that we're involved and we do the job of the consultation to a certain standard. Then option 2, and then we provide that information to the Liquor Control Board. They take it, they review it, and they count up the letters in, the letters out, that kind of thing, or the number of attendees at a meeting or whatever it might be. Option 2 is we're not taking a position on this. Liquor Control Board, you please do it. You're quite skilled at it. You've done it before. You know how to do it. It'll be done according to law. Take care of it. Option 3 is we say we reject the application, and that just stops it now. No cost to anybody, and or I don't think there's an application cost. There might have been, but it's put to the side until the next time an application is made.
And yeah, I support what Councillor Gray is saying is in terms of those options. So we have voted, and if voted on option 2 and it failed, and if we want to take, it doesn't sound like we want to entertain option 1, there is the ability to go with option 3, which is reject the application.
So if I may add to that is prior to this package being compiled, our planner was not able to get confirmation from the liquor board if council chooses option 3, which is to reject the application, if that's the final outcome, or if the liquor board still has privy authority to just go ahead and grant the license. So that part I cannot say definitively. If council chooses option 3, if that actually stops the application process with the liquor control board. So I'll have to get a reply to continue to communicate with the liquor control board on that.
So the one thing I have to clarify though, if I look at planner's report, it talks about if council chooses to proceed with this option and reject the application, then a letter of resolution will need to be provided. So
right.
Yeah, so it fits in with what you're saying as well though. So committee, what is your wish? Councillor Gray.
I'll make a motion to reject the application.
Do we have a seconder?
And I'll speak to it if someone seconds it.
Can I get a point of clarification first? Do you mind?
Go ahead.
Right in the middle of a motion. So we don't have the information from the planner regarding clarification on option number 3, reject
Option
the
number 3, that's correct.
So we don't have that information. I just don't feel comfortable voting on it one way or another without complete information. And so I'm not saying I'm going one way or the other on rejecting the application. I'm just saying I don't have enough information to make that informed decision, especially since it's a question of the interim CAO and of the planner. So, okay.
Great, thank you. So point of clarification has been addressed, I think. So we have a motion on the floor. Councillor Gray.
No, actually it's not on the floor. It's not seconded yet.
Yeah, the motion was the second.
Yeah, we have, so Councillor Gray's made a motion, so go ahead, Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I could make a different motion that perhaps would be better, just to table this to the next meeting where we have clarification from the planner on the issue of whether rejecting the application puts it aside until a new application is made, say for example, a year from now.
I'll second that.
Okay, so sorry, what just, Councillor Gray, I think you want to
table,
postpone decision, yeah. And then, okay.
Postpone the decision until the next meeting when we have clarification from the planner on option 3.
Thank you. And seconder to that motion, Councillor Donaldson. And any further discussion? I'll support that motion. So, Mayor Little.
I just wanted to know, does the committee want any clarification on any other point? Maybe open that up to the committee just so for a second thought. The reason why I wasn't, I was going back and forth on the public consultation is it's going to cost us money if we do it. It's going to cost us money, it's going to cost us staff, so I'm cognizant of that. Although sometimes it's important to pay money, but if we don't have to, then I would rather someone else do that process, but I'd like it to be done if the application is going to be heard. But it would be nice to have that information.
Councillor Gray, thank you.
Well, I don't think it needs to be in a form of a motion, but it would be nice to get clarity on the special event permits. My understanding is a special event permit allows, if it's applied for and accepted, it would need to be reviewed by the district because it's on district property. But the license for a special event would be from 9 in the morning till 2 a.m. the following day. And I'd like to know whether or not in approving an application whether the district can limit the hours of a special event permit. And I'm asking that because this is different. This is now a licensed facility as compared to a manufacturer's license, which was have a slightly different set of rules, which I'm more familiar with in the application process.
There are complexities within this, I guess.
Yeah.
Makes my head kind of spin a little bit, but thank you, Councillor Gordon. Mayor Little.
Yeah, and I wanted more clarification on what we also allow in the district. I understand that the Metchosin Cafe and the community hall are not municipal buildings. However, I would like to know what the standards are for other businesses within the community within 150 meters of Mile Zero as well.
So if I can just get a point of clarification to the 150 meters, it was mentioned in the report that that's an arbitrary number that was chosen by staff because that does capture some residences in the area. So we do not have a policy. If the committee wishes, we could extend that to 200 meters, 300 meters, whatever number that the committee sees fit.
Yeah. The liquor board does 500 meters.
Yeah.
So one point of clarification, Mayor Little, I think you wanted background into what the other liquor serving establishments in Metchosin, what their hours are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are they allowed to serve liquor until 2 a.m., for instance, on special events? I can't remember, honestly. I know that. I just can't remember.
Yeah, but their liquor service, yeah, there's a few things there, so go ahead.
Yeah, and things are controlled as the applicants have suggested. There's the liquor service hours, then there's what's the choice made by the facility. So for example, the golf course has a certain hours they're open, which are different than the hours of another place, and especially event permits are a different thing again. But they're also controlled by the owner of the buildings. They decide the length of time they're open. In this instance, I'm just raising the issue of, what time do we want to close of our buildings that we own.
Great. Ms. Tarnowski, thank you very much. And, okay, so are there any further comments on the motion? And hearing none, I will call the question, which is basically to table this motion to get more information. And all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. Okay. So we next move to most. Yeah. The councillors update. Just go through this very quickly. So on April 29th, I attended the line of duty death service for Assistant Chief Lance Caven, who was Assistant Chief with the Langford Fire Rescue. It was a very well done event, and there were hundreds of people there. Had a chance to sit with my Langford colleagues, and yeah, it was a very moving event. Metchosin Community Day is in planning right now. It is set for Sunday, September 10th, and as I think we've heard a few times now, the focus will be on kids and families, and it will be a scaled down event. No beer garden kind of being the biggest change, but there will be a dinner as well. I mentioned the Bufferland Working Group that met, and there was a meeting tomorrow, which I also mentioned as well. The Metchosin Grounds Group met last Thursday, and general updates were provided. One of the interesting ones is we talked about the cricket pitch and cricket screens that were on order. They're apparently coming, so good news for the cricket community. And we also talked about volunteer recruitment as well. So there were some ideas that were shared, including the potential of having some type of volunteer recruitment event. And so the fire chief and myself, given her enthusiasm for the idea, were tasked with putting that together. So we'll have further conversations about that. And the Beckingham Road amenities zoning application, there was a site visit held for council on April 22nd, and for the busy event schedule this week, they're holding an information meeting on Wednesday at the community hall from 6:30 until 8:30 p.m. So that's on Wednesday. Okay. And hearing no comments, So, stormwater detention pond covenant. So let's talk about this again. So we, again, this was made more public, or essentially public. It had been known sort of in, you know, if you chose to read closely some of the documents that have been circulating way back in 2017, 2018, you would see it there, but it took some work. It was really only made known in December of this year. So I hope everyone's been able to pick up the report from the website. There's a lot of information here, and I benefited from input from Ms. Tarnowski and also District Legal Counsel. And I'm just going to go through some of the top line questions. The first one is a very basic one. Is the covenant and easement valid? And the answer is yes. It is on title, it is signed duly, it is there when you go look into the information. So this was a lingering question, and again, I think the reason why it was lingering, because it was a surprise to folks. But it is valid, and it is binding on the owners of Lot D and the owners of what was then known as Lot A, but now the buffer land. So again, the key thing is it runs with the title. So if Lot D was to be sold, Lot A, the buffer land, was to be sold, those obligations go with the ownership of that property. Okay, question 2. What obligations does the district have under the easement and covenant? And this is boiled down to 2 things, so I'll read them to you. So the district must permit and not obstruct access to the buffer land by the developer for the purposes contained in the agreement. So that's a summary of the obligations that we have. And second, the district must not interfere with, endanger, or obstruct the infrastructure, the stormwater infrastructure, or the works as it's known in the covenant. Okay, 2 simple points kind of boiled down there. The next thing is a little bit more detailed, ironically. What are the developers, otherwise known as the grantees' obligations under the easement and covenant? And what follows are upwards of 11 points. And I'll just go through them very quickly here. So the developer must obtain the district's consent to the size, design, location of the stormwater detention works prior to construction, installation, or extension. The developer must construct and install the works in accordance with the district bylaws and regulations. Must carry out work in a workmanlike manner. Must take steps to prevent soil slippage. Must repair damage to the buffer land caused by the construction. Must repair the works on notice from the district. And must obligate any transferee of Lot D to assume its obligations under the agreement. Yeah, and then we've talked about some of these other things. Must not commence construction on Lot D. Must not build any, sorry, that was until the monitoring station was installed. Then can't construct any building structure or infrastructure until the stormwater management plan is approved. And finally, the developer must indemnify the district for loss arising from the agreement or from the developer's acts or omissions in respect of the agreement. So if the terms of this are followed, and I mean, in some ways, the onus is on us to make sure they are, it is a powerful, it is a powerful set of obligations. And what's interesting here is there's possibly an opportunity, because one way or the other, the stormwater from that development was going to find its way into Dustin Creek. So we now have the opportunity to influence how that might look. So our job at council is to make sure that that happens in the best way forward. So, okay. So question 4, what rights does the district have within the easement and covenant? And there's a lot here, but I'm going to just, I'll just hit the 4 bullets. So the district may maintain the works in a proper state if the developer fails to do so, and then charge the developer. The district may draw down the stormwater monitoring station security to cover costs of repair and maintenance of those works for a 1-year period. The right of indemnity from the developer for loss arising from the agreement or from the developer's acts or omissions, so we've covered that already. And again, the developer may enforce the covenants in section 5 and 6 by way of injunction with legal costs payable by the developer. So there's a fair bit of clout there.
District.
The district, thank you, thank you.
Councillor Chu, can I just ask on the previous page, you mentioned the developer must construct and install the works in accordance with the district's bylaws and regulations. Now, I imagine we're still looking at that, but have you got a sense yet? Have we got anything that we can turn to in our own bylaws at the moment? I'm not sure we know, but just you discovered yet?
I don't disagree. No, I think much is going to be known once we look at the stormwater management plan.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a great question, and we actually have a bit of an answer here. So, who will be responsible for the maintenance and performance of the stormwater ponds once individual lots in Lot D are sold? And then the second part of that question is what liability could we be exposed to? Now, part of the answer is a bit speculative, but I have some reason to think it is going to hold true. So, Section 223, subsection 1 of the Land Titles Act confirms that on the deposit of a plan of subdivision of a dominant tenant, so that means Central Mountain Estates in this case, the benefit of the easement applies to each of the new parcels. So that obligation found in D will apply to the actual individual owners. So here's, this is from our legal counsel. So it is likely that Langford's approving officer has required the developer to execute a servicing agreement for the stormwater works as a condition of approval of the subdivision of Lot D to ensure adequate drainage installations of the development. Okay, the specific terms of the servicing agreements can vary, but usually the developer funds the construction of the municipally required works and the maintenance for a limited time before transferring ownership and maintenance of the works over to the municipality. So there is some more work we have to do on this, but the obvious thing is the developer builds and then turns it over to Langford. So again, I feel like in this process, from the time we heard about the sale in October of 2021, there have been umpteen surprises. Sorry, not umpteen. There have been a number of surprises that have come up. And I think this is one we need to double down on and make sure that it is going to be solid. So, in terms of Langford assuming responsibility for the stormwater works. So, okay, and finally, two more questions. Is Metchosin conveying its concerns regarding the easement and covenant to the developers and Langfords? And the answer is yes. We've had phone calls. I spoke to somebody connected with the development on Thursday to talk about this. And we will be further in touch with Langford and the developers as well. And there is a letter and correspondence we owe them. And we bulleted out some of the things that we need to mention, and particularly around the importance of effective storm management in terms of protection of Bilston Creek, Metchosin Creek, and ultimately Woods Lagoon. So, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say finish, and then I've got
Okay,
some questions
great.
and comments.
Thank you.
Please.
And finally, question 7 was a mix of questions and sort of speculative in a way. Is there an opportunity to avoid having the detention ponds in the buffer land? If not, what are the broader benefits that we could see? And again, could this be developed as a combined wetland and stormwater retention facility? And I'll just read the answer here. So district officials have connected with the developers and their consultants. The developer is very aware of Metchosin's preference not to have the detention ponds in the buffer land. If at all possible, the developer has requested its consultant team relocate the detention ponds to within its boundary. The developers are very aware of Metchosin's preference for a stormwater system which will incorporate natural biological processes that can support the overall health of the water and ultimately the we have just been talking about. So I want to pass on thanks to Mr. Smurfett for some of the questions that went into that document. I think we answered the top kind of level ones. Gary had put forward a number of questions. We probably didn't get them all, but in terms of time and legal resources, I think this is probably what we can do for right now. So committee, any further questions for Councillor Collins?
So, Councillor Shukin, you say we now have in our possession in the office the stormwater management plan. Do we have that from Langford now?
So that is with the engineer, so he told me on Thursday. He had just seen it and was taking his time to review it. He didn't give any indication of his timelines for doing it, but he was very aware of our interest in the referrals to the advisory committees, and that there's a policy that's imminent as well. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Craig. Thank you.
Sure. Maybe I'll just ask, if we send a letter, will that come from council or from the working group or from staff? It seems like it may be a bit of a negotiation, so I'm wondering if it be kept at the staff level. I'm just not sure.
That is a good question. I don't think it would come from the working group. And I think that's probably one to take back to Ms. Tarnowski.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting though, because it's both a technical thing, but there's also some politics involved as well, in choosing to prioritize certain things over maybe some other things. But I'll connect with Ms. Tarnowski and talk about that further.
Great. Just thinking of the ability to be nimble in response to what's going on.
Absolutely.
It may be helpful at the staff level, obviously taking direction from council. My other question was, I like what I'm reading here about the detention pond possibly not being in the buffer land. At the same time, though, let's have our eyes set on the best and most durable solution to protect the creek. In other words, if it's better on our land to do better protection of the creek, I'm good with that, as opposed to forcing it in Langford and then have a lousy result. So let's keep our eye on the ball here in terms of the health of the creek, and just making that suggestion or wish. But the other thing was, do we know about any runoff precautions over the industrial area? Has that come up yet? The other part of the buffer land, the further part up, I guess I'm wondering about. And maybe that's something we should inquire of Langford about at some point here. And if the working group would take that on, or council, either way, but.
I would suggest not the working group right now, because they will have their hands full. It is a great question. And particularly because what I'm to understand is the industrial side will still be using septic systems. What I understand is they will not have municipal services sewage coming up. So that's an interesting twist.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that's maybe one to take away and strategize in terms of how to get more information. So.
Yeah, maybe we could bring it back at a future meeting. It's just one not to forget, I guess.
Yeah. Great. Marilyn.
Thank you for this. So I have a number of questions. So this is going to be reviewed by our consultant engineer, who's a civil, as I understand, he's a civil engineer. Does he have the qualifications to examine this and give thorough and comment? I'm not suggesting he doesn't have his engineering degree. I'm just wondering, does he have the qualifications to comment on the stormwater management program or proposal?
Yeah, and I have to say I'm not maybe in the best position to say whether he has or hasn't, but when I talked to him about this, he did harken back to experience he has in this area.
Okay.
So
I think that's something that we'd like to check on and ask him about. And secondly, the developer must obtain the district's consent. So is that the district's consent, or is that the district and council's consent, or is that just the district implying that would be council as well?
what I understand is that it is the CAO who would give approval.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what do they mean by workmanlike manner? The developer must carry out work in a workmanlike manner.
Yeah.
It's sort of old archaic terminology, and I don't know what that means really.
It must have some legal standing and meaning, but I don't.
Okay.
Probably it means not bad workmanlike manner,
Okay.
not poor workmanlike manner. So, good question.
Okay, and the other thing that I wanted to know about, and I think it's a real shame that we've got this flow monitoring station, but it doesn't monitor for quality. It's just quantity. And I don't know if we have adequate metrics on absolute pre-development flow. And so what are we going to compare this to? So those are some of the concerns that I have. Regarding question 5, the section 223, this is on page 48. I think this is one of our biggest problems because once the lots are developed, all the rights and all the responsibilities will be turned over, inherent in the sale of those lots. So if something happens, and again, unintended consequences, if the walls fall or if we get immense flooding there, which we may do in some of the events, we would have to take each individual lot owner to court, as opposed to the city of Langford. And I'd like some kind of clarification regarding that. And then, I had a question about who sends the letter, council or staff. And I like the answers to question 7, but nothing's written down. I would prefer things to be written down in paper rather than phone calls and discussions. Having things written down makes me feel a lot more comfortable.
Okay, great. Ms. Tarnos.
So I'm just going to add information to question 5, because that was a question that I specifically asked about. So that lies in the servicing agreement that was mentioned here. So the suggestion strongly suggested that we meet with the city of Langford to find out exactly where the servicing agreement is at. If there isn't one yet, it's encouraged that we have one that will see the city of Langford take over ownership, responsibility of the infrastructure post-sale. So that we will be dealing with, Metchosin will be dealing with the city of Langford in terms of maintenance, repairs, or anything like that. So that, like I said, that lies in servicing agreement part of question number 5.
Okay, perfect.
So through the chair, Ms. Tarnasi, as the legal counsel has advised us, we haven't had those conversations or any exchange of written documentation back and forth regarding the servicing agreement.
That's correct.
Okay, so would you like a resolution from council to have that done, or what would you like from us? I think that would be a good idea. I don't know what my colleagues think, but I think that would be.
I think it'd be a great idea to have a resolution to direct me to do that.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. I'll make that motion that council directs staff to, as per the legal counsel guidelines, to communicate with the Langford's approving officer regarding questions of the servicing agreement, to address issues such as indemnity and maintenance of the stormwater works going forward. So both during construction and then after sale of those lots.
Great. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Donaldson, and discussion.
And just within that, I don't think we need to change the motion, but just to say that we request Langford assume the obligations. I mean, see what their interest is.
And through the chair, if I can just reach out to the deputy corporate officer, Ms. Hanson, did you get the motion? Or did...
I didn't get the complete one, but I'll get it on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you want me to repeat it?
I have to say I'm good with the motion the way it is.
Okay.
Because I don't know if we know exactly what Langford's obligations are at this time.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it'd be great to make a sort of a non-confrontational. Why don't we just go? I would suggest going with the initial motion, and we can amp it up if we need to later.
Okay.
So, okay. Good. So, any further comments on the initial motion? Hearing none, I will call the question. All in favor? Great, thank you very much. And I think we're done. This, sorry, Councillor.
Yeah, in the budget, we've provided some funding for a hydrologist. I just wondered how that person can be involved in this.
Well, one of the ways they could be involved is during the review of the stormwater management plan. I had a glimpse at other plans, and they're quite technical documents. I am hoping that the policy is passed on Monday that will allow, again, these plans to be referred to me asking PTAS, very much like a subdivision plan would be over a certain threshold. And from there, those groups may come up with some questions and we can refer it. So that would be my idea, by the way. So. And a working group may have questions, the Bilson Creek group may have questions that we could, yeah. So, Marilyn.
And I was also hoping that the Agriculture Advisory Select Committee would also be included with Metchosin Environmental Committee and the Parks and Trails.
Great. And
so the three of them.
Yeah, that is in the new draft of the policy, so great. So, okay, so I think we can close off that discussion. And I do acknowledge that we've had 2 pinks in terms of correspondence related to Mile Zero. One has come from Mr. Morgan of Mile Zero, and the other has come from Bev Bacon and Kathy Atherton. So, great. And there is no more business with the Community Planning Committee for tonight. So could I have a motion to adjourn? So moved by Councillor Donaldson and seconded by Councillor Rapp. And all in favor? Thank you. Thank you, everyone.